Now, listen, tomorrow night is Gimel Tammuz, so I decided to do this. This is a mime from the Mitteler Rebbe. It's very long, as you could tell, but for the Mitteler Rebbe it's actually kind of short. We're not going to learn the whole mime. If we finish half, even less than half, it'll be perfectly fine. This is a mime about Hishtatchus, about the whole idea about going to Kivrei Tzaddikim Befrat and Bechlal visiting cemeteries. I'm sure you know that we're very superstitious about superstition. We're very paranoid about delusions. Mention that Zachaim, people convince themselves of all kinds of things, and they're also rapitated. They're also because it's Avodah Zarah and it's Darkei HaMoiri, it's Goyish, and it's not in the spirit of a Yid to get superstitious. I think I once spoke to you about this, that in halacha, it's a question whether you could go to a palm reader or a card reader, a tarot reader, these things, because of tamim tim avaylekech. People go to cemeteries. It's a funny thing, going to the dead. They're not talking back, you don't hear them. And b'chlal, you have an issue, you go talk to the Eibishter. What are you going to a cemetery for?
Isn't Iron Horror a little like superstitious sort of?
Right. So there's, exactly.
Do you believe in that?
Oh, ayin hara. Oh, you see, okay, fair point. I see what you're saying. So there's klalim in Torah, there's rules in Torah, and faket, there are actually certain things which are permitted in Torah, and maybe even mitzvahs in Torah, that look like superstitious, superstitious, with it going to cemeteries. Because it is a funny idea. First of all, if you have something to say to the Eibishter, and he can hear you in shul, he can hear you on the street, he can hear you in your living room, you don't have to go to a cemetery to talk to God. Now, but then you're going to talk to the dead, from V'deirish Shalom Meisa. You're not allowed to go in. There was Avodah Zarah, it's called Ohel and Yadayni, where they would do things to try and bring back the dead. So even in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, in Hilchos Rosh Hashanah, Shlomo Gansfried was as straight as a nail Litvak. There was nothing Hasidish about him. He was a very pious man. And his sefer was Niskabel. The Rebbe used to speak about the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch probably more than any other sefer. But he was a strict Litvak. And you see things that he writes, which we do exactly faket from him, because he was so strict about being, in the straight and narrow. He writes, you're allowed to go to a cemetery for Rosh Hashanah. It's permitted. So in Nigla, there's a whole issue of going to cemeteries, even to Kivrei Tzaddikim, let alone to deceased relatives and so forth. And in Pnimis HaTeira, it's a whole shtuda. We make from visiting a cemetery and going to Tzaddikim the biggest Indian. We call it Hishtatchus. In the old, I know an old Russian Jew, a real Pashta Yid, who talked to me about the blockade in Leningrad and how they had to bury people. He never said the word cemetery. Dem Heilige Ort. He was a young kid at the time. He was a teenager and he was involved. A cemetery is called the holy place. Again, of Heilige Ort. You took people, you put them on a wagon, you understand? A cemetery was viewed as a holy place by Hasidim. People go to the cemetery for various reasons. And certainly to go to Tzaddikim. So here is a Maimer that has 5 madreges in visiting a Rebbe, a Nasi, Bechlal, visiting a cemetery. And we're going to learn it. And I would say, probably, that the reason we go to the Rebbe is primarily for reason number hey, although for us it's completely unrealistic. We'll talk about it. And perhaps also reason number dalet. Okay, this Maimer, at the very beginning of the Maimer, is 5 different bases for why we go to the Ohel. If I read the 5 reasons, I'm happy. In other words, on page Tes Yud Zayin, near the bottom of the page, he starts going into the Alter Rebbe to get a Sakedish. I'm not planning on learning it. If we get to it, Ma'atoiv. If we get through these 5 madregas, it's just an interesting limud as a preparation for Gimel Tammuz. So let's not waste any more time. Let's read it inside, unless you have something to say. I'll listen. Lahavin inyan ha'hishtatchus. We must understand the idea of hishtatchus, of going and spending time al kivrei tzaddikim, about the kvarim of tzaddikim. People even go visit relatives and so forth, but specifically tzaddikim. Lag the Rebbe hine. Inyan hishtatchus al hakever. The idea of going to the gravesite of a tzaddik or of any person, and especially tzaddikim, and spending time there. Yesh bozeh kamo madreges vayfanim sheinim. There's different steps, various steps and different forms. But derech klal, in general, yesh bozeh madreges. There's 5 levels. The first few levels make common sense. They do. The first few are very simple, and there's nothing spiritual about it. They're very practical. Okay, ha'alef, number one. Mashmavua b'Shulchan Aruch Eid HaChaim Hilchas Tisha B'Av. This is in the halachas of Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is a day for Avelos. It's a day to be sad. V'zel Sheni. So the Shulchan Aruch writes as follows: the fact that on Tisha B'Av people visit Aveis HaKvaris, it's to evoke Avelos, mourning, sadness, to bend the Yetzer Hara, loshu b'tshuva, to do tshuva to the Eibishter. V'al derech, Maimin Azal, like the Gemara says in Masechta Brachos, v'im lav, and I'll tell you what is im lav means in a moment. And if not, yaskel hayem amisa, you should remind the Yetzer Hara about the day of death. It bends the Yetzer Hara. Moshe Kotzler brings the pasuk from Mishlei, from Kehelas, Toiv, Leiches, El Beis, Ohel. It's better to go to the house of a mourner, Mileches El Beis HaMishra, to go to a party. Mishum v'acha yitin alibi. When you visit the dead, the living, take to heart. Okay? Let me explain to you what this means, B'kitz and Nimritz. We know, and I talked about it, in all of our fast day classes, I've talked about fast days. So you know that we hold that we don't fast. We don't fast to feel bad. We don't fast to say, Azaydah suffered, we should suffer too. That's not Jewish. We fast as an act of tshuva, right? Something negative occurred. There's a reason. There was a cumulative effect or series of Avedas which had negative results. And we fast not just to feel bad, but to do tshuva, based on the belief that nothing happens randomly. The din is that if a tragedy comes to a person, then a person says, mikra nikras, it's a coincidence, it just happened. So the Chazal say that that's his mideres ha'achzorim, it's a sign of cruelty, and it's a lack of emunah. We don't believe Hashem is punishing us. We shouldn't walk around thinking Hashem is going to zap us in the back of the head. But when something comes our way that's tragic and that's challenging, it's a wake-up call for Mizakt, even if it's not me personally. So when we have a fast day, we fast as an act of tshuva, as a means of correcting the wrong so that we do tshuva for it. So when it comes to Tisha B'Av, there were Jews who used to go to the cemetery for a very simple reason. There is nothing that's more sobering than facing one's own mortality. I speak English. Right? There's nothing that gets you out of your mashke more than the idea that nobody lives forever. Young people are young forever, feel they're going to live forever. That's how it should be. But a healthy person feels like he's going to live forever. And we don't think about dying. We don't. Teda set up human nature that we should forget about people who pass away, because if we didn't forget about people who pass away, and we always anticipate Hei B'Chachaim, we'd go mad, right? That was the Pella. Yankov lost his son Yosef, and he never got over it. Why? Because Yosef was alive. But that's how we live. We don't think about it. One of the most powerful means of doing tshuva is to think about Hei B'Chachaim. The Gemara says, Yetzer Hara is on your case, right? What do you do with Yetzer Hara on your case? You schlep into the Beis Medrash. And the Gemara gives a whole bunch of steps what you should do when Yetzer Hara harasses you. When all else fails, think about Yema Misa, think about dying. It's a very negative motivation, but this is why people visited cemeteries, Tisha B'Av, as a means of remembering death, their own mortality, and it brings us into the straight and narrow. That's the bottom line. When a person thinks about Hei B'Chachaim, it brings him into the straight and narrow. When the Rebbetzin passed away, you guys are too young. You remember the Rebbetzin passing away? The whole year, the theme that the Rebbe, you remember, Mendy, by any chance? Yeah. It was V'chayit and Aliba, the living should take to heart. It's the very, very same pasuk. The living, in other words, when somebody passes away, those who are alive have to say, I heard about this person who passed away, it's a lesson for me in my life as well. I have to learn something from it. Okay, this is the first madrega. A person goes to a cemetery, it reminds him of Hei B'Chachaim, and it's a great wake-up call. But there's a beautiful, cute sikha from the Rebbe. Yud Beis Tammuz Tafshin Yud Aleph, I'm not mistaken. There's an audio tape of it, actually, where apparently by Fabrengen there was an insurance salesman. And in those years, before the Rebbe was the Rebbe, he did this as a standard procedure. But after he was the Rebbe, in the earlier years, it would happen, someone would come to Fabrengen, and the Rebbe would talk about his profession. A guy once came to the Rebbe, he was a launderer. The Rebbe started to go through the whole process of dry cleaning, and the guy said, how do you know this? The Rebbe explained exactly what he does and how he does it, and the different kinds of soaps, and he explained it all in Avodah. So the Rebbe says, think about it, you have a friend, he likes you very, very much, And he comes over, puts your hand on his shoulder, says, you know, I love you very much. I want to tell you, one day you're going to die. So buy life insurance. He says, that's a good friend. That's a good friend. So the Rebbe explained the whole concept of life insurance. And the Rebbe said, the Indian of life insurance is this. You're going to live a long time. Just be aware of mortality. Be aware of the fact that life is limited as a means of using it effectively. So in any case, let's just finish that paragraph. This is the first reason people visited cemeteries. It humbles a person. I don't think this needs any further explanation. This is very self-explanatory. Maybe it's a few minutes too long. This is Madrega Aleph. This is Tisha B'Av. Essentially, put yourself in that as a good place. Reminds you of Hepech HaChaim. Vabes. The second idea of visiting a cemetery, it's also mentioned in Shulchan Aruch, but not in Tisha B'Av, in Rosh Hashanah, Hilchos Rosh Hashanah. That here there's already two different reasons why people visited cemeteries. People would visit cemeteries, graves, and to spend time by the graves davening to Hashem. And here's a different reason. Cemetery is a place where tzaddikim are buried. And I suppose we could say that every Jew, once they're buried, is a tzaddik. People do tshuva before they pass away. And certainly after they pass away, they go to Yenevelt, their slate is cleaned, more than 11 months the person doesn't suffer. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but it says in Sfarim that when a person passes away, the first year you don't go to his gravesite, especially relatives. And the expression that's used is eretz fanumen, he's busy. It's a time that a person is being judged. People don't need distraction and to be weighted down, to be burdened by people who knew them in their physical lifetimes. There's a Grada story, which it's pretty famous, I figure, where there was a Hasidic Rebbe who was visited by a Jew who says that his father is coming to him in his dreams, and he's screaming bitter to them. He's pleading for mercy. He doesn't know what he wants. So he says, go to his tzion and chop off the titles that were written on his matzeva. They had written things in his gravestone that were very exaggerated. And Avyenevel taught them gemishpat. He was judged for those things, and he was suffering, he was agonizing over it. So the Tzaddik said, take him off his tzion and he'll have a rest. In any case, but after 11 months, we're all righteous, we're all tzaddikim, people are all tzaddikim, and you're visiting Pashat, a holy place. This is the tradition by Jews. You go to a cemetery, you know, it's a holy place. Okay, because it's a holy place, it's a place that's pure, holy and pure. The tefillas are more accepted there. And naturally, Hashem that He should give you mercies because of the righteous people who are lying there in the dust. So this is already an Eidelere reason. You're not just going to think about the opposite of life, which is very depressing. You're going there because it's a pure and a holy place. And I think this makes sense. You know, you ever go into the Rebbe's room? You ever go to the Rebbe's room? Huh? I don't know how you experience it, but you just somehow feel like this is a holy place. It's just different. And the room evokes from you certain feelings. Basic for us, the Ohel has a similar impact. You go to a holy place and you feel holier, and it's easier to connect to the Eibishter. It's easier to forget about nonsense and to be involved in what's really important and to dive into the Eibishter. The base time. This has two reasons. Ha'alef, the first is the one he just mentioned. Sha'amakim kadosh v'torah, the place is holy and pure. V'zeh goyim, and this affects shemakablim tefillah, that his praise will be accepted. And abeis, and the second reason is what he said in the first paragraph. Shebetzvada yispal l'sham b'kavana retzuya b'yesa, you'll daven better. Machmas his eirus halev b'tshuva, the heart will be aroused in tshuva. Kanal, as we said in paragraph 1, mishum v'chayit and alibe v'choli. When you see people who passed away, the living take to heart. So essentially there's two reasons. Number one, because it's a holy place, and number two, because it reminds you of v'chayit nalibe. V'zeh goyrem shetiyet filosei retziya umekubel. This affects that the prayer should be accepted. Right. So there's two levels, two inyanim in Shulchan Aruch about visiting tziyin. One is exclusively avelus, one is exclusively sadness. The other is that also, but also because the place is holy. The hagimel. Gimel is painful. It's painful. I mean, if a person goes to his parents, God forbid a person lost a child, ukadema and the like, when you go to a place that brings back to you personal pain, it makes you cry and eulogize and mourn. And of course, it opens up the heart, makes the heart very porous, as though one's deceased is directly in front of them. And of course, the impact is the heart is broken seriously. The heart is, the soul is crushed or pained. It touches the very point of the heart, to cry from the deepest depths of the soul. In other words, the Mitteler Rebbe was into tshuva. And what's mean tshuva? To cry your heart out. And whatever it takes to get yourself in the right mood works. In Tanya Perek Lamed, the Alter Rebbe says a person has to do tshuva from time to time. What's the best time to do tshuva? When you're depressed anyway. You're in a bad mood. Oh, chaparayim, do tshuva. The point is, you're going to the cemetery to do tshuva. The cemetery is evoking from you bitter feelings, not because of tshuva, but because of bitter feelings. And you transfer those emotions to a good thing. In other words, when a person is open emotionally, they're open to everything. They're not just open to the thing that aroused the emotions in the first place. So even if you went to the cemetery to think about the child that a person lost, it should never happen to anybody. It evokes emotions that open you up to think about Hashem and to do tshuva and so forth and so on. He brings the Gemara about Rabbi Yechanan. You know what this means? This is the bone of my 10th child that I buried. This is a Gemara in Masechta Brachas. It's Shabbos, I believe it is, right? What is it? Brachas. Rabbi Yechanan, somebody was talking to Rabbi Yechanan about Tzaddis. Rabbi Yechanan said, when Mashiach comes, he doesn't want to be there. He says, Yesei, v'loi echazeh. Let him come, I don't want to see him. Because he anticipated, he felt like a Tzaddis in the times of Mashiach. Rabbi Yechanan lived a very, very, very long time. And he buried many kids. I don't know if he died young, or he lived so long that they survived him. But the bottom line is that somebody came into Rabbi Yechanan and he was talking about the pain of burying a child. So Rabbi Yechanan showed him that he has a necklace of bone from the 10th child that he buried. And he carried it around on his neck as Yisurim Shalav. Rabbi Yechanan was... Huh? He wore it on his neck like a charm, like an amulet. He took it. His son died. He took it and he put it on his neck and he carried it around. You ask me how he was permitted to do it, Api Halacha. I don't know, but I know one thing: Rabbi Yechanan, you can't learn it. He was Orthodox. Jesse Jackson would call Mahaimi. He went on Rabbi Yechanan, one of the greatest Tamiroim. But this was for him an from Yisurim Shal Ahava. So somebody complained to him that he had tzaddik. He said, "Look, here's my tzaddik, and don't feel bad." It was his point. Shayanei etzlei ha'etzem. He carried around this board mishum agmas nefesh to be ma'agim, to pain his soul. Shal ishkach abnei, he should forget his son Shemeis that passed away. And as a consequence, Talmud Libe Nishbara's heart was broken. Like you mentioned before about Yankov Avinu, he cried for Yosef 22 years. He didn't stop crying from the bitterness of his soul. For the passing of his son. He never forgot it. Now you have to understand, we were raised, I guess the right way to say it, in a different Lubavitch. We were raised that crying, first of all, the Rebbe's not into crying. The Rebbe's into dancing and being besimcha. And even if a person is going to cry for tshuva, for whatever reasons, you have to be so careful not to be taken over with a negative mood, with a sadness and with depression. The Rebbe sees sadness as the devil, as the Yetzer Hara. The Mitteler Rebbe encouraged it, because the Mitteler Rebbe had different chassidim. If a person could cry, and the cry motivates you to work harder, it's a good thing. But a person could cry, and the cry debilitates them. It takes away their fire, it takes away their passion, it takes away their will to live, then crying becomes negative. So we grew up, we were constantly brainwashed by the Rebbe with this idea, to use the language of the Tanya. I teach it to boys, Perek Chavov. It's tshuva with meridus is like Rachmana litzlan, about chemotherapy, radiation. It saves a life by killing the person, Sadness and bitterness of tshuva is a necessary evil. You have to have it, but by itself, it's a dangerous thing. And the Alter Rebbe writes that if you feel you're going to get involved in negativity and not get out of it, it's not worth it. because the negativity is very, very, very destructive. So the Mitteler Rebbe is speaking here in what seems like a very, very favorable sentiment about crying and bitterness. This was his generation. We're not into this. In other words, the first 3 paragraphs that we just read, which have considerable elements of sadness and bitterness, it's a part of Torah, but frankly, it's not a part of Torah we practice. The Rebbe says today, even for Avedis, you have to be optimistic. What's the optimism? That Hashem for sure forgave you. The Rebbe says, Terach gut v'zayin gut, that the Eibishter forgave you for Avedis. Don't get down. So we're reading it because it's part of the Maamar, but these madregas, I would argue, have very little to do with us. And we continue. I think I'm 9 lines from the top of page Yudalef. When someone visits a grave, you forgot about it a long time. Nevertheless, you remember it again. The person gets very, very bitter and cry. The point is not that it should make you sad and depressed, or as we argue in what's called the Freudian age, to feel bad for yourself. Woe on me. In yeshiva, one time a guy walked in. He's 85 years old. He came to raise money for an orphan. He was 85 years old. We're not into lamentations. We're not into negative Judaism at all. But here he encourages this based on the principle that it affects psichos halev. It opens up the heart, the gamri completely. Which affects that a person cries for his avedas gamkin. Also, 7 lines from the end of the paragraph, with a broken and crushed heart, and crying incessantly. So that the Mitteler Rebbe can make you do tshuva. Why don't people do tshuva? Why don't people repair what they did wrong? We're very self-assured, we're self-important, we're arrogant, we're very busy with ourselves. When a person's heart is, God forbid, broken, makes no difference. Why? As I take it from out immediately, a person does tshuva. I'm sure you guys understand. The tshuva doesn't mean feeling bad. That's not the Jewish program. We left that for another religion. Tshuva is fixing what we did wrong. And ultimately fixing means, I'm not going to do it anymore. And if we're in a position to actually repair it, to pay back the debt or to whatever the case may be, that's tshuva. But tshuva is motivated by humility. Tshuva is motivated by the need to do tshuva. And this bitterness motivates tshuva. God forbid, it should never happen to anybody. This is what the Rebbe gives Yisurim, Shaboin, Allah Adam, should come to a person, should call him Yisurim Shal Ahava. Yisurim of Ahava is a very, very high madrege, that a person, Yisurim Shal Ahava, a person accepts. Yisurim Shal Yira, we have to deal with. Yisurim Shal Ahava, a person accepts. And we don't want the Ava, we don't want the Yisurim, but the Mitteler Rebbe apparently had Chassidim though in this madrege. Afilu b'manachayim mezayna, even Achmanu Litzlan in children and in health and in parnasa. Shemavachim la'adam, that a person is made to suffer. Kedei la'shive b'tshuva shleima, that makes him to tshuva mekedev ish v'leiv amak b'yesef, from the depths of the person and from the innermost levels of one's heart. But Rabbi Yechon, and repeats again the same statement. Rabbi Yechon used to say, this is the bone of my 10th son. Rabbi Yechon was a madriga of Yisurim Shal Ava. The Gemara says that the Reb Shimon Yochai's son was doing Yisurim Shal Ava. And then the Gemara says, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Yehuda HaNasi, wrote to Mishnah, he also wrote Makabal upon himself Yisurim. But the Chazal say that he wrote Makabal upon himself Yisurim, but it was not the same madriga as Reb Shimon, who did Yisurim Shal Ahava, and Rabbeinu HaKadosh had Yisurim, but it wasn't Yisurim Shal Ahava. Rabbi Yechanan was later than both of them, and the Mitteler Rebbe says that his Yisurim was Yisurim Shal Ahava also. Okay, sure. Now, if I may say so, these 3 levels that we just read are very, or at least in part, they're negative. Right? Visiting a cemetery is not about who you're visiting. It's that you are visiting. It's not about the person. You're not coming to a cemetery to talk to a neshama, right? You're not coming to a person to connect to them or to ask them to daven on your behalf. It's not even about them. It's about you. You're going to the cemetery because it breaks you. You're going to the cemetery because it's a pure place. You're going to the cemetery, it brings back memories that soften you. Whatever the case may be. In other words, these 3 reasons are very niggledik. They're very logical. It's not hard to understand the justification of going to a cemetery. In other words, like you mentioned, there's no superstition in going to a cemetery to do tshuva. Because it's not about the dead person. It's about you, how you are inspired in a cemetery. That's what the first 3 reasons have in common. Now the fifth reason, hey, which is going to be Sif Gimel, is for sure the most positive. For sure the most positive. We'll get to the fifth reason soon. We're now going to read Sif Beis, which is V'hamadrega Hadala. This is sort of in between. And this is especially, again, let me ask you the very personal question. You remember the Rebbe? I'll tell you the truth. I don't care if you remember it or you're imagining it. Don't give up on that memory as long as you live. You know the story with them? I must have told you the story 3 times with the Mendel Futterfass's grandmother. Reb Mendel didn't have a father. His name was Menachem Mendel ben Rab Menachem Mendel. Every year they would call him up Rosh Hashanah and he would give you a jolt. They called him up to Aliyah and everybody said V'chayit Nalibi. A man is named after his father, Rahman Litzlan. He had a Bobbe who was a real great woman. She was a very smart lady. And she was very close to the Rabbeim, to the Rebbe Rashab, and I figured to the Rebbe Marash before, and to the Frierdiker Rebbe. And she was a special close to the Rebbe. She had special access to, basically the Rebbe Tanivkist and the Sarah. So when a Mendel was a kid, and he had no mother and no father, so she brought him to Lubavitch, and she brought him into the Rebbe Rashab. And he came into the Rebbe. The Rebbe Rashab had much more malchus than the Rebbe, than our Rebbe. Of all the Lubavitcher Rebbeim, the Rebbe with the least malchus was the Rebbe with the most money. It's just one of those things. The Rebbe lived so simple, it's upsetting, Pashit. You've been to the Rebbe's house, you can see how he lived. The other Rebbeim had more royalty about them. The Rebbe Rashab sat with a silk vest, with 2 gold chains attached to his buttons, and 2 gold pocket watches. One was not enough, Chas v'sholem. And his tzir was very regal. And the desk, the room, everything was very, very, very royal. She brought him into the feed to Rebbe Nishma Satan. He was 3 or 4, maybe 5 years old. And then Rebbe asked him, "Wie heißt du?" So he said, Mendel. And then it was lernst to what are you learning? He asked him a few questions, then he gave him a bracha. Sure. When he walked out of Yechidus, his grandmother says to him, the Hest, Levi Yitzchak. Levi. You're not Levi Yitzchak, right? You're the Yitzchak.
Yes.
Oh, Yosef Yitzchak, yeah, okay. You hear the Rebbe, she says to him, Wo bist du gewesen? He says, Bam Rebbe. Wie der Rebbe is gesehen? How did the Rebbe look? So he described the Rebbe's room with the desk and the sfarim and the chair and the gold pocket watches. And was hat der Rebbe dir gefragt? Rebbe, wie heißt Was hast du gesagt? I said, my name is Mendel. And she rehearsed for him the whole Yechidus, blow by blow, until the bracha, which is of course the most...
She was in there with him?
No. Shait. A half an hour later, she looks for him, and she says, Mendel, who bist du gewesen? He had a lot of Kabbalah say. Today's kids would say, don't bother me. He says, Bam Rebbe. Wie der Rebbe is gesehen. She reviewed him the whole Yechidus, word for word, blow by blow. An hour goes by, she sees him again, Mendel, who bist du gewesen? Over the course of a week, she reviewed him the Yechidus maybe 20 times. And when he was an old man, I remember him saying, he was a little boy. And he had clear memories of the Rebbe Rashab because his grandmother didn't let him forget. It's a story. In any case, the reason Dalit is about visiting a Rebbe at Tziyad to remember the Rebbe. And specifically, he talks about those eyes, those holy, powerful, frightening eyes. So let's read. V'hamadrega hadalit. The 4th level, Humashahilchem al kivri atzadikim shahayu yedim makirim es. You visit a Rebbe Tzaddik, a Nasi who you knew. So you knew the Rebbe well. You knew the Rebbe. Even you knew the Rebbe pretty well. And you also knew the Rebbe. And Levi has a special bracha that he remembers. Shahayu yedim makirim es and b'chayim v'chol. You remember them from their physical lifetime. Ozai, so that, mitzatekef emunasi. Since he had such strong amunah, when he was alive, you believed, as we all did, of course, and do. He's a holy man that's called, he's a godly man that's called holy. When you went into the Rebbe, while he was here and you could see him physically, you would lose your whole identity. When you walked into his holy chamber. From the great shame and submission, that you're embarrassed, Pashit, and humbled in the front of the tzaddik, you become like stone mamish, you cannot speak. The greatest madrega bittul is when you're so bottled that you cannot talk. As we say in the beginning of Shemona Esrei, second line from the bottom of page Yudalad, Hashem Safasai Tiftach. We ask Hashem to open up our lips, right? Of course, the rest of the pasuk is Upi Yagit El Secha, so I should be able to speak. When you stand in front of Hashem, you cannot talk. In front of the Rebbe, you can't speak. But the Tzalta Ma'aseh Rebbe Nissen, I'm sure you've heard of Rebbe Nissen. The Rebbe Nissen once walked into the Rebbe to Yechidus, and he couldn't say a word, couldn't speak. He used to prepare himself. Rebbe Nissen was a real chassid. He wasn't paper mache. He wasn't. Rebbe Nissen Nemenov. And he prepared himself to go to Yechidus. People say they would come to the 770. He pushed his father. Yeah. And he couldn't speak. The Rebbe asked him a question. He didn't answer. The Rebbe asked him a question. So the Rebbe found out him that he should leave, and he'll correspond with him. Could you imagine a Yid lose his speech in the presence of the Rebbe? It's called von Abushe, von Achno. It's a very deep experience. And we all felt that, you should know. When the Rebbe looked at you, you had one thought in your mind. Rebbe, please look at him or him. It's too close for comfort. The Rebbe's eyes. Do you remember the Rebbe's eyes? You remember the Rebbe looked at you, looked into your eyes? The Rebbe had the most beautiful blue eyes. They were so, so beautiful. The pupils were small. And they looked so sweet until they touched your eyes. When the Rebbe's eyes touched your eyes, it was like a physical force. It was literally a physical force. It's impossible to describe. When the Rebbe looked at you, you looked away. Just say you can't look at the sun. You couldn't make... the idea that eyes have power, but the Rebbe, you experienced it bepashtus. He touched you with his eyes and they zapped you. They looked straight through you. And the Rebbe could look at 100 people in 30 seconds, and each one was touched with those eyes with such power, with such potency. It was unbelievable. It was mamish unbelievable. The Rebbe's eyes were extremely powerful tools. I didn't have Yechidus for my bar mitzvah because I pushed it when the Rebbe had his heart attack. So I always say to my Talmidim, the Rebbe raised us with his eyes. We used to come to Fabrengen Nishin. Yeah, we didn't have Yechidus. You had Yechidus. You went into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told you what to do, and you did it, and you went the next year, and the Rebbe said, no, so where you're holding, and he gave you the next piece of instructions, like the Rebbe used to explain by the Fabrengens about how successful Yechidus was. But I didn't have Yechidus. It didn't happen that way in my day. But the Rebbe used to raise us with his eyes. If we came to Fabrengen, and we were the way we were supposed to be, the Rebbe looked at you. So you came to Fabrengen, and the Rebbe, and you were not the way, the Rebbe would look at you. The only one who knew it was you. But if you multiply that by thousands, to the right, to the left, he would look at you. I could hold my cup a whole Fabrengen. If I just make the whole Fabrengen, you fill up a little wine, the beginning of Fabrengen, raise your cup, he's answering you. Around you, he doesn't look at you. When the Rebbe looked at you, you knew he saw you. The Rebbe officially couldn't see, you should know. In the later years, it was very hard for the Rebbe to see. But B'chlal, when the Rebbe was looking, it was not a Gashmiz Dekiri, it was a Ruchniz Dekiri. When the Rebbe looked at you, there was no doubt about it. If you had a suffix, he wasn't looking at you. And when you were prepared for a Fabrengen, if you were in a good place spiritually, wherever he was, he would tell him, the Rebbe Pashat raised us with us Heilige Oid. People who had Yechidus went into the Rebbe's room. You have such memories. You have memories that they become Pashat one with you. You visited the Rebbe, you saw the Rebbe touched you, it's forever. Just Friday night, the guy tells me a very cute story about a Gerer Yid who was very curious about Lubavitch. And he said to himself he wants to come to Lubavitch, check out Lubavitch. But he doesn't want to go stamaza. He wants to go when the temperature is high. He wants to go when it's really, really intense. So he asked his acquaintances, what's the time to visit? And they said, you have to come Simchas Torah. So he's coming Simchas Torah. But every year something else happened. He didn't come to Tov Shin Nun Beis. The Rebbe's eyesight in Nun Beis was very poor. He came to 770, and first of all, the first time he showed up, he got sent for a ride. I mean, he was a Ger Chassid, and again they pushed, but he didn't see anything like this any place before. They shoved him out of the shul so quick it no one hit him. But he wasn't a stupid guy, and he wasn't so sensitive. He figured out the program, and he got with the program. By Simchas Torah night, he knew exactly what he has to do, how to stay alive, and how to stay in shul and so on. In any case, how many people were in 7 back office? Mamish thousands, 5, 6, 7,000 people. Was packed. The Rebbe was almost till the ceiling. You know how high the Rebbe's place was? You have to realize the ceiling of 770 was dropped 3 or 4 feet since Gimel Tammuz. You know that? The ceiling of 770 you see now is about 4 feet lower than it used to be because of the air conditioning expenses. The Rebbe was almost till the old ceiling. In other words, I suspect that the Rebbe was now in his place, he would have to bend his head, push it. That's how high up the Rebbe was. And the Rebbe looking around the room, and he sees everybody. And here's this Gerach Chassid, someplace in the crowd of who knows how many, and the Rebbe spots him. The Rebbe touches his eyes. He looks away. A few minutes later, the Rebbe spots him, looks away. A few minutes later, he sees him a third time, and they were pointing to him. I mean, he was never in Christ in his life. There's no way that Rebbe is pointing to him. So he's looking around to see who was Rebbe pointing at. And sure enough, Rabbi Groner is indicating means him. There was Hakafa for Israelis, and the Rebbe says he's a guest from Israel. He should go to the Hakafa. How the Rebbe knew he's a guest from Israel? Okay, so he went to the Hakafa. After Hakafas, the Bochum saw he was a privileged character. The Rebbe singled him out of a crowd of thousands. So they gave him to drink, and he was, of course, not very used to it. So he overslept. He came to 770 late. Now for Yerushalayim at late, 10 o'clock in the morning is like the middle of the afternoon. You know, even for Bacharim, it was late. He comes to 770, and he wants to get to the front. And they're pushing him back. But he sees that people are whispering to one another, whispering, and they let you right on through. There's some magic code. If you know the code, they let you to the front. He's an Israeli. They don't have Simchas Torah in Israel. So he asks, well, what are those people shushking that they get a free pass? He says that they're koyanim. So he's Yerushalmi, he didn't bother. I'm a koyan. So he gets all the way to the front, he goes up in the bim, and suddenly it hits him. Oh boy, I'm amongst, I got a duchem. The Rebbe goes down from his place. The Rebbe used to come down from his place and stand below the bima. In other words, west of the bim, and the koyanim would stand in the Rebbe's place. So when he realizes that he's trapped, he tries to get out, and no one's letting him go. And he's stuck there, so he puts his towels over his head. He was amongst the koyanim and duchening. After duchening, the koyanim go by the Rebbe one by one. One by one, and the Rebbe tells each koyan, Yesh koyach koyan. I have to get out of this. It's push it, not right. So he tries to go from the other side, and Rebbe doesn't let him. Because from this side, Binyamin Khan doesn't let him. Make a long story short, everyone is screaming, getting Meshuggah. Why don't you go with everybody? To make a long story short, one by one they come down the steps. The Rebbe tells the koyan in front of him, Yesh koyach koyan. The Rebbe tells the koyan after him, Yesh koyach koyan. The Rebbe looks at him and gives him a big smile. Ashayda Maisa. But this talks about the Rebbe's eyes. This is what Sif Beis is, Sif Dalet. Medrega Dalet, a tzaddik that you knew. And you experienced his holiness. You experienced the power, the kedusha, the purity of the Rebbe. Yes? And during his lifetime you experienced so much shame it was hard to talk. Second line from the bottom of page Dalet. The same is true. When you visit a Rebbe Anasi, a tzaddik whom you knew during his physical lifetime, Mizbatal Sham, you become nullified and humbled there. But yes, it's very much. When you go to the Ohel, you experience the same shame that you felt before. You know, the Rebbe once said about the Frierdiker Rebbe, he says, before everybody thought, some people thought you could fool the Frierdiker Rebbe. Now you know you're not fooling. You go to the Ohel, there's no lies by the Ohel. There's no lies. The only lies are the ones that are directed at ourselves. The Rebbe knows the program. You know, not to go would be the worst thing. A guy said, I don't go to the Ohel, I'm embarrassed. That would be the worst thing. You have to go. And up Shemenzach, you know, and feel bad that you're not in the right state of spiritual being, and connect and let the experience of going to the Rebbe. You know, the Rebbe used to tell Chassidim, you have memories of the Rebbe. Picture them again, right? You went to Bar Mitzvah, yeah? You had Yechidus. Visualize being by the Rebbe. Rehearse it in your mind. It creates a connection between us and the Rebbe. It's a very powerful thing. Top of Tetzvav, yes, umitzatekef emunah hagedayla, because of the power of this great emunah. Shemayim mekdushas nishmasa hakadesha vatayri, you believe in the holiness of the neshama that is holy and pure. She also kfar lemkema lamayla mayla beirach alila, which has ascended higher and higher. Okay, v'hasheirus hanefesh hanisheres alaguf bekova, but at the same time, the nefesh of the tzaddik is left over in the kever. Meshikosav, as the pasuk says, v'nafshi olav te'ovel, that the nefesh experiences the avelas shelachas imi bakovet, it's included in the kever. All right. Now I want to make a clarification. We were brainwashed by the Rebbe, by nobody else, with the idea that the Rebbe is here, he's not in Gan Eden. In fact, there's a story with the Frierdiker Rebbe yet, that someone said some Frierdiker Rebbe about his father, about the Rebbe Rashab, Nishmasai Eden, that his neshama is in Gan Eden. So the Frierdiker Rebbe got very upset, and he says, "Was schickst du dem Taten in Sibir in Silke? Why are you sending my father to Siberia to slave labor? Ich sag Nishmasai Eden, Ich sag nishma sei bi. Friedrich Rebbe said, I don't say his neshama is in Gan Eden, I say nishma sei bi. So the Rebbe repeated the story and he said, ich sag euch it. I say nishma sei bi. A Rebbe, a Nasi, as the Rebbe explains it in the Sichos, doesn't go where they take him. He's in charge. We're barely in charge in this lifetime. A Rebbe, a Nasi, and a Neshama Klaus is in charge even of Vienna Welt, and he goes where he wants to go, and the Rebbe wants to be where his Chassidim are. As long as we live by the teachings of the Rebbe, we follow his erois, the Rebbe is here, he's not there, he doesn't want to be there. This is the preferable place to be, because here you have what Chassidus calls Gili HaAtzmos, the Eibishter himself, the essence of the Neshama is here, or the essence of the Eibishter is here, as opposed to in Gan Eden. And specifically the Madrega of Nefesh. In this essay, this Maimed, at the bottom of Yud Zayin and Yud Ches, he goes into the Igeres HaKedesh from the Alter Rebbe, which we're not going to have time for, where the Alter Rebbe says, the Ruach goes to Gan Eden. The Nefesh remains in the Guf. But through the Nefesh, the Ruach also has a connection with this world, but it's not limited by the body. So the Neshama of the Tzaddik remains connected to his Guf. And the Rebbe said, somebody once asked the Rebbe why he has to go to the Ohel. Especially since the Rebbe, you should know, had many times stories where the Rebbe used to answer people and say that the Shver told him, and he hadn't visited the Ohel B'chlal. So the Rebbe said that where the Guf is, the Yechida is. There's a special union. The Yechida, the Guf has a special connection to the Yechida. But in any case, then the Rebbe is there, and the Neshama of the Rebbe is there, V'gam Akifim Shala Nefesh. The hidden levels of the Neshama, Meskashim and HaNefesh, are connected to the Nefesh, to the part of the Neshama which remains with the body, which is why we make a tziyin. Tziyin means a tombstone, which is also called the Chazal Nefesh. Right? There's the Guf Kaddish, there's the holy body where the Nefesh is, and then there is the tombstone, which is the Keli for the higher levels of the Neshama. Like the Arizal explains. Here's the bottom line. When a person comes to the place that's the holy resting place of the Tzaddik, the fun of any pictures, the holy and pure face of the Tzaddik, he's filled with awe and fear even more than before. Because when you met the Rebbe, he's a physical guf. The soul is more pure. Now, I would contend that we'd all love to have the Rebbe. We want to have the Rebbe. We expect to have the Rebbe. Begashmias. This is the Mitteler Rebbe talking. So, the Mitteler Rebbe was a little bit of a more spiritual man than us. So, to say that you have a deeper connection to the Rebbe is a very high madrega. But certainly this is true. When you go to the Ohel and you remember the Rebbe and you remember your experiences with the Rebbe, you know what I'm saying? Everybody is moved. Everybody, at that moment, has a Seder Tshuva, and we should take it, and we should be inspired by it, and we should become better people for it. This is the fourth Madrega, okay? Because the purposes of brevity, I'm going to go to HaMadrega HaHei, which is on the next page. The point is, Madrega Dal is not sad like the other one. It's not about remembering dying and death and mortality. It's about remembering a Rebbe, remembering the Tzaddik, and being connected, Pashut, and continuing that connection now as well. And Gimel says, page Tezayi now, Ve'inyin HaMadrega HaHu, Hu Madrega Ve'yamir. The fifth level is the highest level. She'ein L'mayla V'mena, there's nothing higher than it. Ve'inyin Hishtatchus, L'kiv Tzaddikim HaMavur, B'samach Ches, and it should really be Memches. It says in footnote 38. Mishnah Chasidim. Samaches would be Sefer Chasidim. Shehu Gedela Kolkach, which is much higher, Be'erech, relatively speaking, to the extent you can actually get something from it, intellectually, and be inspired by it. Let me stop right here and tell you the point. Again, I'm too young to have Yechidus. Right? My mitzvah had nothing. When I got married, I had a Yechidus clause. But the truth of the matter is, the Rebbe is a tzaddik, is a Rebbe nothing. When we went in with hundreds of people to the Rebbe, he met each one of us personally. Maybe we didn't feel that way, but that was the case. A person goes into the Rebbe to Yechidus. Yeah, what happens? Go to the Rebbe to Yechidus. I'll tell no ma'isa as a hagdama to this. Okay, a young man, a bocher, a chassidish bocher, had Yechidus in the 70s, in the Lamets. And this I remember. The Rebbe went through a few years where he was coughing terribly, and the Rebbe's coughing didn't stop till after Lamed Ches. The Rebbe didn't allow himself to be examined like that. The Rebbe used to cough, you can't imagine. coughed and coughed and coughed. It was much difficult to listen. Sometimes in the Rebbe's room, you would hear the Rebbe coughing. His Bach had Yechidus, and after the Yechidus, he wrote down minutes of the Yechidus. And as the custom was, when you had a Yechidus by the Rebbe, you would send it into the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would actually fix it. So he wrote on his notes, Kan Hishtal Rebbe b'miyod. Here the Rebbe coughed a lot. It bothered him. Standing in front of the Rebbe, he was coughing and coughing, can't catch his breath. So he sent it into the Rebbe crossed it out and wrote, Kan hoyu halomes v'esteirim rab. Here there was a lot. There was all kinds of spiritual blockages, and that's why the Rebbe was coughing. You understand? The Rebbe was coughing. I read in a book that the house next door to the Rebbe's, right, which is now Lerman's house, past the Rebbe's, belonged to the Boston Rebbe. Emes? You remember him living in Crown Heights?
I mean, yeah. He's from Montreal now. No.
There was a Boston, he passed away. He lived in Borough Park afterwards. The Boston Rebbe. So he was interviewed once, and he said, so a friend of his, an acquaintance of his, was in his house, and on a Friday night after the tish, like midnight, 1 a.m, he took him up on the roof of his house, and they could right into the window of the Rebbe's office. The Rebbe's room on the second floor had 3 rooms. One was like a library, which was actually, it wasn't packed with Sfarim. There were actually very few Sfarim in the Rebbe's house, not that many Sfarim. One room was a bedroom, and the middle room, which had windows to the alley, had windows to the space in the house, was the Rebbe's office. And from the roof, you could see straight into the Rebbe's room. And the Rebbe was sitting and learning. And the Rebbe was coughing miserably. So he writes that he was with the Boston Rebbe on the roof, and they were saying that the Babich Rebbe sits a whole night and learns, and they were both lamenting the fact that the Rebbe was coughing so much. So I repeated it to Chaim Baruch Abelstein, who was very close to the Rebbe. The Rebbe said, and he was the one who told me how that floor looked. So he says, you know why the Rebbe was coughing? Because he was looking at him. He stays there. I know, in other words, the Rebbe was very sensitive. If you intruded, he felt it. It bothered him. He felt invaded. You understand? It's a very interesting to have. In any case, but you go into the Rebbe Yechidus. You prepare a zettel, you write on the zettel everything that's transpiring, you put it down with the Rebbe, you give it to the Rebbe reads it. It was very weird, Yechidus. You know how Yechidus was? You'll correct me if I'm wrong. You would walk in, the Rebbe would get up for you. You know? You have a seat. He wouldn't stand up his full height. He did that to plenty of people, but he got a seat. When you would leave, you're about to walk out, the Rebbe would get up again. An acquaintance of mine told me, you know how it feels to be 14 and the Rebbe gets up for you? It's very unpleasant. The Rebbe got up when you walked in. Every person, the Rebbe got up when you walked in, when you walked out. The Rebbe looked at you at the beginning. Then he took the zettel from you and he read it. And the Rebbe used to take a pencil. The Rebbe used pencils. He would roll it like this here. He would twirl it and he would read it. He would twirl it and read it. Then he would take his pencil, he would make a few notes, and then the Rebbe would talk to you. The whole time the Rebbe talked to you, he didn't look at you. He used to look down. It was like a sikha kind of thing. He give you brachas, he would answer you. I figured that people who you couldn't exactly call Hasidic people, you know, the Rebbe talked to, but when Hasidim, especially Bacham, went into the Rebbe, this was the Seder. Before you left, the Rebbe would raise his head like and look at you, and this was time to go. This was Yechidus. And even though I don't have the experience, I figured the Bacham didn't mind that the Rebbe wasn't looking at them, because it was very difficult to make contact with the Rebbe's eyes. I know from experience, Pashat. In any case, so you walk into the Rebbe Yechidus, yeah, you prepare a note, and so on and so forth. You come to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe answers you. Let's think about it. You didn't just come to your, to your favorite uncle. You came to the Rebbe. There's 2 relationships going on here. There's a conscious relationship, there's a subconscious relationship, right? There's a brain-heart relationship, what we would call nara nefesh ruach neshama. You're talking to the Rebbe with your own judgment. You're telling the Rebbe what you think is important to you right now, what's on your mind, what's in your heart, what bothers you, what pains you, what you want to correct, what you want to improve, whatever the case is. And the Rebbe deals with you on that level. In addition, there's a neshama connection you're totally unaware of, a yechida connection. The Rebbe is connecting to you on the yechida level. You have no access to your own yechida, so you're certainly not accessing the communication between you and the Rebbe on that level, unless you're a Gevaldik Chassid, right? You go to the Ohel. You talk to the Rebbe. On the Naran level, there's no communication. You don't hear the Rebbe answering you. I mean, I yet to meet a person that I believe say the Rebbe answered him and he heard. People have dreams, and there's unbelievable stories that people tell. But when the Frierdiker Rebbe passed away, the Rebbe said the Frierdiker Rebbe is still the Rebbe. Yeah, but he went to the Ohel and came back with answers. So it's a famous story. Yechen and Gordon told the Rebbe that we're not Breslau, we need a living Rebbe. And what's going to help if we're going to go to the Ohel? So he says, don't worry, you go to the Ohel. He said, but if you don't get a clear answer, give me the paper. I'll be in the Ohel there too. I'll come back and I'll give you an answer. Rashag once complained to the Rebbe that he goes to the Ohel and he doesn't hear anything. So the Rebbe said, if that's the case, maybe Yishtatchus shouldn't go. The Rebbe, even when the Rebbe was denying that he's a Rebbe, he never denied that he talked to the Frierdiker Rebbe, just like I'm talking to you. He would come back from the Ohel and tell people answers. If a person said, I went to the Ohel, didn't get an answer, he says, don't worry, I'll be there soon, I'll get you an answer. This is nicht geheißen Rebbe. But it's a normal thing. You're going to a tzaddik, there's no reason anything changed. Because this is a person whose yechid is conscious. When your yechid is conscious, the yechid to yechid connection continues, even though there's no physical, audible words exchanged. You follow? So just like when you had a yechidus 25 years ago, 50 years ago, you went into the Rebbe, there were two connections. You knew only the lower connection. The higher connection you didn't know. When you go to the Ohel, the lower connection is only happening from one side. The higher connection is happening from two sides. There's a yechida to yechida connection. Consciously you're not experiencing it. It's a real thing. And hopefully it affects us. Hopefully it benefits us. That's the whole idea of going to the Ohel. You're not going there because there's nothing better to do. It's not historic. It's not nostalgic. It's real. You're going to the Ohel because you want to have a connection to the Rebbe. Those people who are in Yechida level have hasagas. What does that mean? They actually experience something. Yochel hasik sham hasagas. They actually experience the neshama of the tzaddik, and they actually can come away from the Ohel with giluyim. The Rebbe Rashab became a Rebbe. He was 21 years old. And there's a lot of stories about the Rebbe Rashab's early years when he first became a Rebbe. I'll tell you two stories. The Rebbe Rashab was about 22, 23 years old, and he traveled to all the Rebbeim, and he came to Hadich, the Rebbe's Tzion. And in Hadich there was a chassid whose name was Reb Tuvia that lived by the Ohel. There was a tradition in those days, Alta Chassidim would live by the Ohel. Reb Tuvia was Tzemach Tzaddik's a chassid, who after the Stalkers, Tzemach Tzaddik became Kapus, the competition of Lubavitch. Maybe a different time I'll tell you the whole story, but Lubavitch was actually the smallest Chassidus. Kapus was the largest. There were many more Kapus Chassidus than Lubavitch for 50 years, for half a century. Reb Tuvia sees the Rebbe Rashab coming in. He knows exactly who he is. He's the youngest son of the Tzemach Tzaddik's son. The Rebbe walks into the Ohel. The Rebbe Rashab does, and he starts to cry, bitter tränen. He sobs and he sobs and he sobs and he cries incessantly. He can't stop. When he walks out of the Tzion, Rebbe Tuvia tells him, "Junger Mann, was weinst du?" Young man, why are you crying? So the Rebbe Nishma says the following: Als me zocht und me zocht und me zocht, bis me kommt zum Mocker, und es ist noch alles nicht klar. He says, when you search, you come to the source, the Alter Rebbe, and you still don't have clarity, you cry. So the Tuvia tells him with a little bit of a jab, he says, Tim younger man, a younger man hat my Rebbe. A young man needs a Rebbe. So the Rebbe Rashab answers him straight back, he says, As ich weiß, wo ist da Rebbe? If I know where there's an actual Rebbe, I'll even go overseas. If there's a Rebbe, I'll go even Me'evelayam. That's the first sipur. Well, the sipur is that a few years after the Rebbe Rashab made the rounds, he traveled to all the Ohelim. He was in Lubavitch, he was in Nezhin, in Hadich, in Hanapola, and in Mezhebush, which is where the Heilige Rabbeim. In Hanapola you have the Mitteler Magid, who's surrounded by a bunch of his Talmidim, including Reb Zusha, Mitteler Bakoyen, and so forth. And Mezhebush is the Baal Shem Tov. And he came back. This was Tav Reish Mem Zayin. And there's a Hemshech Shvuas from the Rebbe Nishma saying it's published. It's beautiful Hemshech Yadeh. And the Frierdiker Rebbe says that Maimer, that Hemshech is based on what he heard on the Ohel. He comes back from the Ohel, he says, Chassidus. This is a Madrege Mo'oid Naila. And I want you to know that we grew up listening to the Rebbe. The Rebbe talked about the Frierdiker Rebbe. And he automatically assumed this fifth Madrege. And the Rebbe was talking to people who, we're not the Alter Rebbe's Chassidim, we're not even the Fiedekem's Chassidim. We're what we are. We're very nice, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people, but we live in the information age. we live in, I have a kid in yeshiva, I tell him that his middle initial is D. It stands for distraction. Our whole generation is D. It doesn't mean Democrat, it means distracted. The Rebbe used to talk to us about the Friedrich Rebbe like as if you go to Ohel and you have a sagas. When you go to a tzin of a tzaddik, your neshama and his neshama connect. Now, if you're in touch with your neshama, you're in touch with the connection that your neshama has with the neshama of the tzaddik. If you're not in touch with your own neshama, so your neshama has an experience, and consciously you don't have it. This is the fifth madrege. A person who's so oisgeedelt that he goes to the Rebbe, and the neshama connects with the neshama, and that experience affects him practically. He just mentions one thing that Reb Chaim Vital visited B'nai ben Yayodah, who was the general of David and Shlomo, and he got pushed at his neshama. He developed a deep connection to this B'nai ben Yayodah, and he got from his tzin, and he went to him many, many times, and he reached Gewaldike Greisa Madreges. So this is what we learned tonight. There's 5 Madreges in Hishtatchus. The lowest Madrege is Avelis, push it to be sad, that's Tisha B'Av. Second Madrege is to be a little bit broken, but the Ikir is you're going to a holy place, so you're going to be purer and holy yourself. The third Madrege is you go to a place that brings out of you the most powerful emotions. Once you bring out any emotion, you could transfer it to tshuva. The fourth Madrege is you go to a tzaddik whom you knew, and it brings back all the memories of the tzaddik. And the fifth Madrege is the Madrege where you push it connect spiritually to that tzaddik. Maybe shall help him that we should be successful. We're really expecting the Rebbe back. We need him very, very bad. But we should have a successful Gimel Talmud, we should have a connection to the Rebbe. And it should not be a positive one, not a sad one. It should be a freilich. It should be chsidim and freilich chsidim.